Hello and welcome back to my channel, and I'm here to do what I watched last week. I hope this is probably on a slant. You've no idea what I have got stacked up to try and get this to record. It's ridiculous. Right, so let's get the old recorder on, as we always do. Okay, so the last thing I left off with last week I think was on the 9th, which was the Oak Room. So straight on to the 10th, and The House and the White String. This is on Amazon Prime at the moment. So a man buys a house from a police auction, unaware of the house's horrific secrets of murder and madness, only to be driven mad himself. This is kind of like found footage style, very low budget, which doesn't put me off, but there was nothing scary, there was nothing original, there was nothing new. It felt quite cheesy in places. Maybe I need to give it another go. I've looked at some of the ratings there, and quite a few people are rating it not too bad, but it wasn't for me. So 1 out of 5. So the next evening I really did enjoy this one. I watched this one on Netflix. So this one is called Superhuman. It's a Chinese movie, and I just absolutely loved the unique premise in this, and it was completely unlike anything I've ever seen. We follow a young man called Sang Yu. He's exhausted from trying to stay awake. Every time he closes his eyes, a demon chases and kills him in his dreams. One night he realizes he has a special power. He can bring back treasures from his dreams into the real world. Almost overnight he becomes a rich man, but his wealth also attracts undesirables, shall we say. So we see the dreamscape that he goes into, we see how he brings things back. We get to know him as a young, struggling man. He writes scripts for movies. We get to see his friends. We follow sort of a girl he's quite obsessed with, and he thinks with all these riches, he's basically going to be able to completely turn his life around. And I really enjoyed this. I thought it was really unique. I liked where it went. I liked how it ended. The acting was really good. There's little bits of special effects here and there which worked really well. I would really rate this one. Super Me on Netflix, I gave that a 4 out of 5. Check it out, it's well worth it. On the same evening I watched a documentary called I Know What I Saw. Now this is basically UFO alien documentary. So the director assembled the most credible UFO witnesses from around the world to testify at the National Press Club in Washington DC. So there were Air Force generals, astronauts, military, commercial pilots, government and FAA officials. And basically they're given their stories, things that they were told to hush-hush about, things that are being kept under wraps. I used to be one of these people that, I don't know if it was a case I didn't believe there were aliens or if I just really didn't care, but over the years and having sort of educated myself a bit about the subject, I really do believe we're not alone, shall we say. Really interesting that there is just so much evidence if you properly look into it and do some research. You may think I'm just cuckoo now that I've said that, but that's my viewpoint. So that's 3 out of 5. It was a pretty standard documentary. The following evening I watched Oxygen. This is one I'd been really looking forward to. I think this is on Netflix at the moment. So a woman wakes up in a cryogenic chamber that has had a fault. She remembers nothing. She doesn't really know who she is. She doesn't know why she's there. She has to find a way out of the chamber without running out of oxygen. That's one of the faults. Well, she shouldn't have woken up to start with. And the oxygen is depleting. And basically if she can't solve what's happening, she's going to die in this. A very similar premise to Buried with Ryan Reynolds. But you've got obviously all the technology and stuff that you don't have in Buried. But still, the performance in this is fantastic. Melanie Laurent? Anyway, really good performance. She was in Inglourious Basterds as well. She worked in the cinema. Really liked this, really liked her performance. Thought it was a nice, unique premise. I know we've seen something similar in Buried, but this very much concentrates on the technology side of things. And we find out who she is, why she's there, what's happened, and it's very interesting. I did clock what was happening before we were shown, but it was a really good film nonetheless, so I give that a 3.5 out of 5. So I'm really sorry if I'm on a slant, folks, but I can see it sitting like this. On the 12th, same evening, I watched. So I've been trying to get my hands on this one for quite some time after seeing Horror Hands channel talk about it. This is a documentary about the USA and a lot of atrocities that's happened there. So it said, a stunning eyewitness experience of the growth of violence in the United States, a documentary of the decline of America featuring footage from race riots to serial killers and much, much more. I'm a bit of a sicko when it comes to things like this. I do enjoy anything real life, real footage. We cover the assassination of JFK, the attempted assassination of Reagan, race riots, as it said, a lot of things, just barbaric things in this. But people had said it was really, really difficult and really hard to watch, and I didn't feel... I mean, years ago I watched a documentary, was it called Victims? It had a one... I'm really sorry guys, my husband's walking about upstairs and that's all you can hear. Was it called Victims? I can't remember. No, it wasn't. It was called Executions. And that is what it sounds like. It's real executions. And that one to me was much more difficult to watch. One scene in particular than this. This was really interesting. I've watched a lot of stuff coming from Northern Ireland. You know, obviously we had the Troubles, which thankfully are behind us now and hopefully will stay that way. But, you know, I do watch a lot of documentary footage around this kind of subject, and this was really interesting. The Killing of America. I give that a 3.5 out of 5. Okay, so on to the next evening, the 13th night. This is one that Sean from Lost in the Reel talked about, and I really wanted to see it following his review, and it's now on Netflix. This is a Spanish movie, Dance of the 41, El Baile de la 41, I believe. This is a true story following a character called Ignacio de la Torre. It's back, I think, 1901. He is actually married to the daughter of the president of the country at the time. He's a gay man. It follows his marriage, things he's sort of having to do for the duty of being a married man that really, you know, he doesn't want to be doing. I'm sure I don't need to sort of like tell you what we're talking here. Also, it covers his wife's distress and what she's going through, and her husband is so clearly not attracted to her. That's obviously not her fault. It covers his character, and he's a really multifaceted character. He's not perfect. He's not a hero as such. He does have his flaws, and we do go into those. Shows the real mood at the time. I think it says here, yeah, Mexico City, November 1901. So these individuals were not able to be themselves. Obviously, we know what it used to be like for people many years ago. There were like gentlemen's clubs where they could go and be themselves and be with like-minded people. And it covers that, and we see the like just glorious freedom that they have inside these four walls where they can be themselves. Ignacio meets and falls in love with a man. So what I really liked about this is the fact that it didn't shy away from the love scenes that, like a lot of movies have a tendency to do. They tend to concentrate on the average person's comfort level with watching a scene between two men, which to me just my mind boggles. I mean, we have scenes with two women all the time, but that just seems to be put on screen as a titillation thing for men, which again just grinds my gears. But this, you know, when it's a proper love scene and love story between two men, it's just so many people don't want to watch it. And Sean really eloquently in his review was really nice about this and said, you know, if this is something that makes you uncomfortable, be aware of this. There are love scenes, you know. I'm a bit more blunt than that. Hello darling. If you've got issues with that, then check yourself. You know, why you wouldn't have an issue with a man and a woman or two women that love one another, but when you put two men in the frame, there's issue there. There shouldn't be, you know, that this is something we want to leave behind. We shouldn't be thinking that way. So yeah, it was a really good movie, really interesting. It is just a story, although what a story. This actual place that they go where they feel safe, and they have this like ball, this dance every year, and basically they're discovered. This is a true story. This really happened, and how these poor people suffer purely for their sexuality and the fact that that's been discovered. And obviously Ignacio is someone high profile, so you know, it's really interesting to see how things were and what happened. And I'll not talk any more about it because I'll just end up, you know, preaching at you, which I don't want to be doing. But I just have issue. What someone else is doing, how does that affect, you know, it's like just let people get on with what they want to get on with, you know what I mean? So I do apologise, my dogs are, there's Dobby back there. Right, so that was the Dance of the 41. On the next evening I watched The Woman in the Window, which is on Netflix at the moment. So this is Amy Adams, who is fantastic. We have Julianne Moore, who's one of my favourite actresses, but unfortunately barely in this. Him that was in Dracula. Gary Oldman's in this. She has nothing to prove but what's real. An agoraphobic woman living alone in New York begins spying on her new neighbours only to witness a disturbing act of violence. So something horrible has happened in Amy Adams' life. She is agoraphobic, won't leave her apartment, spends her days watching her neighbours across the way, and as it says, she witnesses something she really rather wished she hadn't. And this movie covers, did she really see it? Has she got some form of mental illness? Is she fabricating things? We find out stories that she's told about her life perhaps aren't entirely honest. She's got a lodger that's sort of like, we're not sure whether to trust him or not. It's a really interesting movie. I do feel it had the potential to be much better than it was, but I do feel that Amy Adams's performance was absolutely stunning in this. I would recommend that you check it out. It's not perhaps the most fast-moving thriller, but it was a decent enough watch for me. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Where are we? Time Crimes. Right, the following evening, and this is another one I'd been wanting to watch for a long time. This is a Spanish movie. This really intrigued me, the premise of this. A man accidentally gets into a time machine and travels back in time an hour. Finding himself will be the first of a series of disasters of unforeseen consequences. So it is what it says. This guy gets into a time... I don't want to tell you too much about this because it will just ruin it. But this movie has several versions of this guy trying to solve problems that have been created by this very action of going back in time. It's quite clever, but I feel it thinks it's more clever than it is. There are other movies that cover a similar premise which are much, much better. I just felt that it thought it was being really like highbrow and clever, but there were so many loose ends that didn't tie together, and when you thought about it logically and you like followed, I can't say too much, and you followed each character's route completely through, it didn't completely tie together. It was interesting. I found the acting a bit cheesy. This is really highly rated. A lot of people really like this movie. Let me just scan down there. There's the people that I know. So you've got a 4, 4, 4, 4, 3.5 out of 5. So a lot of people really dig this movie. I enjoyed it, but I thought it's rated a hell of a lot higher than it really deserves. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. I liked the idea. I felt that the execution was a bit cheesy. And I felt that they thought they were a little bit cleverer than they actually were, because not everything ties back very well at the end. So the following evening, the 16th, I watched The Scary House, which is on Netflix. What's it? On Netflix it's listed as The Strange House, but when I looked it up online it's down as The Scary House. It's a German movie, Das Schaurige Haus. So this is a kids movie. There's no other way to put this to you. If you've got a kid of about my son's age, which is about 10, this would be perfect. Sort of like that older child going into teens, tweens, you know, that sort of age. But it's a 15 on Netflix for reasons best known to itself. When a big city family moves to a remote town, two young brothers and their new friends try to solve the menacing mystery that haunts their home. They've moved from the city because the mother can't afford it anymore. I think the father's died. They move to a beautiful, they think it's a dump. It's in Austria. I can't tell you how much I love Austria. Just needs a bit of work and it would be amazing, but this teenager's like really annoyed that he's had to move away from a city to the sticks. But the house they've moved into has got a story going on of the previous tenants, what happened to them. There was death in the house, there's something unresolved there, and these kids get together and try and solve what has happened in the house and try and help perhaps spirits that have been left there. It's an entertaining little movie for kids. I sat down to watch it on an evening, and as I'm watching, I'm thinking my son would have really enjoyed this, and I felt kind of like, I gave it a 2.5. I felt kind of like I sort of wasted an evening of adult time to watch stuff I can't watch when my son's up during the day. But it was a decent enough little movie, but it's not for adults really at all, I felt. Same evening, I watched two more. I was obviously bored that evening, so I watched, this is a documentary, Superhuman, The Invisible Made Visible. Oh, that's really long, isn't it? And that sums up this bloody documentary, to be quite honest. This is based on the jaw-dropping experiences of individuals with extrasensory powers that seem to defy the laws of physics known to man today. I won't read the rest. Basically, this is about people that can do things with their minds. We've got telekinesis, we've got all sorts of things, but you couldn't think of a more interesting subject that people managed to make more dull than in this. There's just so much scientific talk, so much highbrow. It's like, what on earth? I need a dictionary. What the hell's that guy talking about? There are little parts of it that are interesting when they're talking or displaying whatever it is, like, you know, like a person guessing what's behind a card, a person making something move that's inside a cylindrical, you know, something that they can't touch, but they can make it move with their mind. So I've always felt the mind has so much more potential that hasn't been tapped into. I think, you know, psychics are not one of these immensely talented people. They just have learned to use a part of their brain that the rest of us don't know how to use. That's my viewpoint. So I'm really fascinated in the human brain and what it can do. And this documentary managed to bore me to tears, and this is one of my favourite subjects, so I wouldn't recommend. It's on Prime, Amazon Prime, if you want to see it. Same evening, Antidoped. I think this was last night. Yes, so this is the last one. So this is on, was this Shudder? I can't remember where I saw this. So this had a really interesting premise, actually. A young woman is held captive in an underground medical facility where selected individuals are perpetually mutilated and then healed using an experimental miracle drug. So this woman goes in for standard surgery, I think appendicitis, and she finds herself in this facility. We meet other individuals in the same situation that are having some hideous, they're not just being mutilated, they're being murdered almost in some sense. Things that are being done to these people are just grotesque. I'll not tell it, I don't want to spoil it for you, but this miracle, like, you know the little bags you get when you get a drip and it all, well, they put this little like bag of amber fluid up and it miraculously cures everything, and these people just want to die. They've gone through the pain of dying multiple times and they just keep getting brought back and they just want to be let go. And then the woman that's there, the woman that we follow, kind of gets to the bottom of what's going on, and it was a really interesting idea and I liked where they went with it. The final scenes I thought were naff as hell, were really cheesy. I just didn't like, I would have liked a more poignant, quite deep, makes you think ending, but it's just almost like they felt the pressure of wanting to give a happy ending, and no, I just don't feel it worked in this case. But yeah, interesting premise, interesting where it goes. I felt that the final scenes ruined the movie, so it took it from like maybe a 3 down to a 2.5 for me. So that is what I watched this week. I'm also watching a few series. I'm trying to remember, there's one called Ghost Wars on Netflix. Oh, I'll tell you what I watched this week. I love the series called Haunted. It's on Netflix. They have now released season 3 of the American one. They did have a Spanish one, which I've watched just one season of, which was on there. And that's it. They've only released one season. But the American Haunted series has now got 3 seasons on Netflix, so I watched the last season of that. And it's basically all real people telling a story of an incident in their past where supernatural, freaky, scary stuff has happened, and they've got all of their family and friends around them to tell the story. It's the real people. We do see like reenactments by actors while they're telling the story and what they felt and what happened, and they're sort of like telling their family the full, you know, stuff they've never really spoken about before, and it's always really scary stuff. And I'm obsessed with ghosts. It's my thing. I love it. So it was really interesting. It wasn't quite as good the last season as the first one. The first one was excellent. Second one was really good too. This one, to me, not so quite fantastic, but still it's a subject I love, so I'll watch it all day long. So that is what I've watched this week. Let me know in the comments if there's anything you think I should check out. I am still chomping at the bit to see Spiral and A Quiet Place 2. Our cinemas are still not open. It is the, what date are we on? It's the 18th of May today, it's Tuesday. I see online that our cinemas in Northern Ireland are meant to open on the 24th, the Monday, but our local cinema website has no mention of opening, so I'm chomping at the bit. I need to see Spiral. I have a feeling I'm going to hate it because I'm not happy that Chris Rock's in it. I'm not happy that they've changed the format of my favourite movie franchise, but I shall go see it. And I've seen a few people's reviews that were actually quite positive, so I've got a little bit more hope, because previously everyone had said, oh, it's crap, it's crap, it's crap. But a couple of people have actually said it's good, so maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised. So let me know in the comments if there's anything you think I should check out, or what you thought of any of the movies I spoke about, and I look forward to speaking to you next time. Over and out from Lisa Lives.